What's up, everybody? We're back with another NFL season, and that means another season of Survivor picks. The goal of this video that we'll be posting weekly is to help you make the most informed and educated decision when it comes to making your Survivor picks each week. I know a few people that left in the comment section that they actually won their leagues last year, and that makes me incredibly happy to hear, hoping to get much more league winners this year as well. As always, like the video. Importantly, subscribe to the channel so that you get to see this content each week for your Survivor picks, and let me know in the comment section what you're thinking this week. If you got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. It's meant to be very interactive. I'm going to go a little bit slower this video and kind of lay the groundwork as the first video of the season. And I want to review each column to talk about what their meaning is and what their importance is in terms of Survivor. So the spread is the Vegas line that's put out there, and that is the projected winning margin by the favored team. So the Bengals here are projected on average to win this game by 9 points. That's what the -9 signifies. And if you look more towards the bottom of the chart, the Lions are only projected to win by 3.5 points on average when they play this game. That spread line translates directly to this money line in the next column, which really is just used to calculate this odds percent chance to win. It's a direct correlation there. And so I'm using this money line to see what the percentage chance to win that Vegas is implying for each and one of these games. Obviously, again, you look at the Bengals, an 81.5% chance to win that game outright is much better odds than the Rams facing off the Lions, the Dolphins facing off the Jags, etc. And finally, we have columns for home and away and divisional games. And if you watch these videos before, you know how much importance I set for those two categories, because over 70% of all the Survivor upsets and all the favored teams upsets happen in two situations. Either that team is playing a road game or they're playing a divisional game. So if you can pick teams that are favored by 3.5 points or more, and if you can pick home non-divisional games, doesn't even matter. You could throw darts and you're going to win that pick 75% of the time just with that strategy alone. Now, when you get to have a more nuanced approach and put even more strategy in it, you have a lot better chance to get your picks correct and to keep going farther in your Survivor League. Just as important as all those factors is looking at the schedule preview for each team, because again, there is so much strategy that goes into picking Survivor. Yes, the 49ers have a great matchup against the Jets where they're projected to win by 4.5 points, but they are going to be favored by far more points when they host New England in week 4. I bet you that's a 14-point spread and they have a 90% chance to win that game. So just because the the 49ers are favored against the Jets this week, there are going to be much more better opportunities down the road in the near future. So it's good to consult the schedule and pick out strategically when you think the best time for each team will be. Obviously, the NFL season is in flux and things change. Teams get injured and the landscape is different. But it's good each week to review the schedule and to figure out, okay, if not this week, then when for this next team. And with that, let's get into the picks. I always start out with games that you should be a little bit weary of. Want to sometimes provide some caution with some of the teams that might jump out the page as more solid teams, but give some maybe advice and heed some warning there. Because just because a team is good or you think that they have a favorable matchup, it doesn't mean it's always the right time to make the pick either. And I think that situation really applies for the Chargers this week. The Chargers are a solid team, and they're facing the Raiders at home, who the Raiders are a pretty poor football team and had one of the top picks in the draft. But you could say the same thing about the Chargers as well. Just a top 5 pick this last year, albeit with Justin Herbert hurt most of the year. A couple of reasons this scares me is that the Chargers, now losing Keenan Allen at wide receiver, don't have a ton of weapons on offense. Austin Eckler is also out of the picture. So you have, outside of Justin Herbert, a very new offensive in terms of weapons around Justin Herbert. The running back and the wide receiver room is completely different and very inexperienced with this personnel. You also have new offensive coordinator and new head coach this year for the Chargers. So a lot is in flux, and I don't really know what kind of Chargers team we're going to come out and see week 1. Also makes me very wary that Again, here you see they're a divisional game. This is a Raiders team that plays their divisional opponents very tough. Just last year, the Raiders on the road went into Arrowhead, went into Kansas City as 10-point underdogs and beat the Chiefs. The Raiders team against divisional opponents is something that I'm always afraid of, more so than some other divisional matchups. It's something about their divisional rivalry here with the Raiders and the chip on their shoulder that they have that makes it very dangerous. Again, this Raiders team went into Kansas City and had an upset last year. This Raiders team isn't too different. They got another tight end in the draft, Brock Bowers, who's more of a wide receiver than anything. He's a very dangerous weapon. They did lose Josh Jacobs, but he didn't have too great of a year last year anyways. The defense for the Raiders is slowly picking up, while the Chargers defense is kind of on the decline and very aging. So all that to be said, I would think long and hard before taking the Chargers this week in your Survivor League. Next pick I want to heed some warning against is the Bills here. This is a team that's favored by a sizable amount, the second most in week 2 at 6 points here at home, hosting the Cardinals here. What concerns me about the Bills is much like the Chargers. They lost a huge piece of their offense this offseason when Stephon Diggs got traded to the Texans for a second-round pick. The guys that are left to pick up the slack in this wide receiver room are very young and inexperienced. Now, Josh Allen is a great quarterback, and he's still got weapons at running back and tight end, but it concerns me with the Bills wide receiver room, what kind of offensive output are they going to have early on. I think as the season progresses, this offense is going to be running like a well-oiled machine under the Joe Brady offense there in Buffalo. But right out of the gate, it might take a little bit of growing pains for these young receivers to figure out their role in this offensive system, and that makes me a little bit concerned for the Bills. Looking at their opponent in the Cardinals, this is a team that's also on the up. While the Cardinals have a pretty poor defense, and that's why I think the Bills have such an edge this game, their offense has a ton of weapons. In this recent NFL draft they got, Marvin Harrison from Ohio State, just a standout wide receiver that is going to make an impact right away. You got Trey McBride at tight end that was incredibly dangerous in the back half of the year when him and Kyler Murray synced up when he came back from injury. And James Conner at running back that seems to keep getting better with age, being able to run both between the tackles and catch the ball out of the backfield. Very dynamic there. So the Cardinals have weapons. They're able to put up points. What's going to really hurt the Cardinals here is their defense. But these are two teams that I'm not sure what to expect this year. Again, I think they're kind of trending in opposite directions. The Cardinals going up and the Bills trending down. So just something I would personally stay away from in week 1. Those are the only two games that I'm really cautious about, extremely cautious about the Chargers game. I think the Bills should get away with, but there are definitely warning signs there. For my best pick, it's hard to deny a team with a top spread and such a difference in odds to win compared to the rest of the teams. The only team this week that has an 80+% chance to win. That's usually a pretty good sign. They're home, the Bengals, and they're not playing a divisional opponent. The Patriots were a bottom 3 team last year, getting the 3rd pick in the NFL draft. They took a rookie quarterback who will not even be starting this game against the Bills. They're going with Jacoby Brissett. The Patriots here, much like the Chargers, do not have a ton of established weapons on offense. Ramondre Stevenson is their running back, and he's a solid running back, but he's not nearly all that explosive. Their wide receiver room might be the most inexperienced in all of football. Along with that, the Patriots' offensive line is just decimated and really one of the worst units in the league here. The Patriots are going to struggle to put up points just like you saw last year, and I think it's even going to be potentially even worse because, they didn't make too many offseason moves to revamp that offense, and the quarterback they did take in the draft is not starting this game. And then when you look at the Bengals, they're nice and healthy, which has really been their Achilles heel the last few years with Joe Burrow at quarterback, coming in the season fully healthy. Great weapons with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, one of the best wide receiver tandems in the NFL. Running back, they did lose Joe Mixon also to the Texans, but they have a pretty solid running back room as they picked up Zach Moss, and then you have second-year running back Chase Brown, who's looking to get a much bigger load this year too. But the defenses of both teams, the Bengals defense is definitely nothing to write home about. The Patriots defense is very solid, as it always has been, but it's going to be interesting to see how that defense holds up under the new regime without Bill Belichick there. Now, Gerard Mayo, head coach, is being praised for his defensive prowess, and that's the position inside of the ball that he played. I just personally think that the Patriots are really going to struggle to put up points here. If the Bengals can put up 21, which I'm very confident saying they can do that with this offense and with Joe Burrow, I think they win this game easy. So I think this is not a trap at all. I think the Bengals here are the best pick by far. But you're not, like we talked about, there's always strategy in Survivor, and you're not always going to pick the quote-unquote best pick because there are situations down the road where the Bengals are certainly a good team to take here, although picking a team against the Patriots will probably be a very lucrative strategy this year. But there's also value in taking a team that potentially is not going to be favored by 9 points all the time. It may be a below-average team, but they just find themselves in a very favorable situation with a weak opponent, and that's the Seahawks this week. The Seahawks here are facing the Broncos, who again were a pretty poor team last year. They had, according to Pro Football Focus, the worst statistical defense in all of the NFL, and that is really concentrated within their front seven. They could not stop the run for anything last year, and even some of their great defensive talents like Justin Simmons and Patrick Surtain at cornerback in the secondary really couldn't fill the holes that that defense had. So they had a lot of struggle there, and much like the Patriots, the Broncos do not have a lot of weapons on offense. Courtland Sutton is their number one wide receiver, but he has not been flashing off the page. The running back room has constantly been rotating and injured, so that doesn't help. And now they have a rookie quarterback, Bo Nix. He spent 5 years in college. Did pretty well last year, but having a rookie quarterback that's never seen an NFL game on a pretty poor team as it is, could be some rough waters right away. And for the Seahawks team, the value comes in that, again, this is not a team that you're going to be looking at each week that you're looking for a survivor. This is not even a team that's going to be favored the majority of the weeks. This is not an above-average football team, and that's really where the value comes in. Seahawks are at home against a non-divisional opponent that is very weak. That's where the tremendous amount of value here in this week comes in. And again, look at the schedule for the Seahawks. And take a look at this bottom line, or second to last line here, and look at their schedule through week 17. I really like to avoid teams that are playing on the road, especially a below average team like the Seahawks. So I'm really not considering that too much. And the only place where I see on the schedule that you would take them on the road might be against the Patriots. But you're looking at the schedule, and you might pick them against the Giants. You might pick them at home against Minnesota, depending how the quarterback play works out there. But there's not a lot of opportunities to take the Seahawks here. I find it hard to believe that there are many opportunities, if any, where the Seahawks are favored by 4.5 at any point for the rest of this season. And again, that's where the relative value of the Seahawks really comes in this week. And what makes this pick even more valuable, again, this is not a good Seahawks team. They're not even projected to have that many wins this season, which makes it valuable, but also makes it risky. So consider your risk here too. But for the Seahawks, they're projected to win 7 games this year. It will be unlikely for them, Vegas is saying, for them to win 8 games or more. So again, the Seahawks wins will be hard to come by this year. They're not going to be always as apparent as this one against the Broncos where they should win. And again, I think there's a lot of value in taking the Seahawks this week for the strategy of it. Now, if you're in a small league where you don't think you're going to be going 12, 15 weeks, then it's probably a little bit too risky of a pick. But if you're in a pool with hundreds, if not thousands of people, it's going to go down to the wire at the end of the season. And it's the strategic picks early on that really sets you up to win the leagues later as the season gets long in the tooth. Those are the games I really want to call out in terms of the ones that you should be cautious on, what I think the best pick is and what I think the best value pick is. Wanted to talk about the other games while we got the time here. For the Bears at home versus the Titans, this is going to be interesting as you're seeing the first look of Caleb Williams in a really revamped Bears offense for a lot of different reasons. You got DeAndre Swift as a new running back there. You got Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze at wide receiver that are new this year. Connecting with DJ Moore, who just got paid big time this offseason, who was one of, I think he had the 6th most receiving yards in the season last year. So a very talented wide receiver room and running back to pair with this first overall pick with Caleb Williams. The defense for the Bears quietly dominated in the second half of the season, and you got one of the most terrifying and feared cornerbacks with Jalen Johnson out there, not to mention a pretty solid secondary as it is. What concerns me about the Bears is their front seven. It's not terrible, but it's definitely nothing to write home about. And the pass rush for the Bears was one of the worst in the league last year, so they're going to have a hard time getting pressure on the Titans quarterback, Will Levis. For the Titans, they're not a good football team. They lost Derrick Henry. Will Levis didn't look great last year. Their wide receiver room is aging. The Titans should struggle to put up points here. I would be surprised if they beat the Bears here. But again, with the Bears, you're getting a lot of question marks with a new team and a new quarterback, especially, obviously an inexperienced one at that. So that's the only concern and caution I have with the Bears pick this week. This could be a very good value play depending on what the Bears do this season. I could also see the Bears, just given the talent and what I believe this defense to be, to really, be a 10-win team this season potentially and have a lot of favorable matchups down the road, more than 4.5 here. You're not going to see the 49ers favored by less than 4.5 often this season, and that's really what makes this pick not valuable. The 49ers, like I said, they're going to be favored by 10-plus points more often than not, likely this season if they stay healthy. They're playing a really tough Jets team that had, I think, the best defense in the NFL last season and is looking to be just as menacing this year. You get Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, who hasn't played football since that Week 1 injury last year, but a lot of question marks with them is the Jets have a great, maybe the best running back behind Christian McCaffrey in Breece Hall. You got a great receiver in Garrett Wilson, and again, a top defense in the league. There's a chance the Jets win this game on the defense alone. You never know what can happen. I don't think they're going to win this game, to be clear, but I think you avoid this pick because it's close enough against a really good team. And again, this is not the time to take the 49ers. Just flat out, I'm completely against picking the 49ers this week. I don't think too many people are considering it, but again, just because the 49ers are the best team and they should win does not make this a good pick. It's almost, I would argue, the worst pick you can make this week. The Saints here at home against the Panthers, and I honestly probably should have put a perceived caution on this one, obviously because it's a divisional game, but I haven't loved what I've seen on the Saints last year. The defense was pretty solid, but again, that's an aging unit as well. They spent a lot of first-round picks on offensive linemen, and none of them are really panned out. So the running game, despite Alvin Kamara in the backfield, has not been very lucrative there. They have an incredible talent wide receiver in Chris Olave, but the quarterback play with Derek Carson's coming to New Orleans just has not been there. And this Saints team is incredibly volatile. They struggled to put up points in many games last season. And it's concerning to be playing a divisional opponent in the Panthers, who are making steps up. This is Bryce Young's second year at quarterback here. I expect him to be better and flash a little more leather this year than he did last year. They got Deontay Johnson at wide receiver to really help him and bolster this passing game. The defense for the Panthers are no slouch either, by the way. This is a unit that is slowly building up its credibility as well. I don't think it's hard for me to see the Saints losing. The way it would happen is if Bryce Young, plays better than what we've seen. But that's what happens each year. There are going to be teams that come out week 1 that surprise you and that play a little bit better than expected. And I think that could be the Panthers, at least in this game against the divisional opponent. So I would avoid the Saints here. I just don't think it's a great spot for them against, if the Saints were -4 against a non-divisional opponent at home, I would think there's some good value there because, again, I don't think the Saints are all that great. They're hovering right around that Seahawks line of slightly below average. But against the divisional opponent, I would stay away. I was intrigued to see the Lions only favored by 3.5 against the Rams. I have a tremendous amount of respect for this team and the fact that their offense is probably the most terrifying unit in football, not solely because of the weapons that they have, but because of the offensive schemes that are employed by the coordinator, Ben Johnson. It's just impossible to guard Amon-Ra St. Brown at wide receiver, Sam Laporta, who is one of the most dynamic young tight ends in the game, and then Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield as well. It's pretty tough to stop all three of those and any given pass play with the schemes that are drawn up. But what I just said about the Lions can very easily be said about the Rams, is they have an incredible dynamic duo with the aging Cooper Kupp, but the emerging second-year sophomore in Puka Nacua at wide receiver. Kyron Williams at running back had a standout year last year too, which is also scary. So these are two very high-powered offenses. Solid defenses, but again, nothing to write home about. The real edge here is the Lions' offensive line, which is the best unit in the league. They should have no problem running the football and whenever they want this game. It's not necessarily a knock to the Rams defense. It's just more so a testament to how dominant this Lions offensive line has been the last couple of years, really taking the ground from the Eagles offensive line. But again, I've been praising the Lions so much this pick, and for them to be only favored by 3.5 is reason to not pick them this week. You have so much better picks and options. The Lions will be favored by much more than 3.5 many times this season, like without even looking at the schedule, probably within one of the next 2 weeks. So I would stay away from them. And then again, really the same thing about the Dolphins. They had a top 5 defensive unit last year, and when Tua was healthy, their offense was, rivaled the Lions for how scary it was with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, which I actually think is the best wide receiver tandem in football. But they're playing the Jags, who have a lot of talent on offense with Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, and a plethora of weapons at tight end and wide receiver to put up points and hang with the Dolphins, potentially. Again, this Dolphins team got a lot of respect for it, but I don't think the time to take them is against a potential playoff threat in the Jaguars, where they're only getting 3.5 points of favorability here. You're going to see the Dolphins pick up huge spreads later in the year when you look at the schedule. And so again, I don't think it's a time to take them right now. But that is all for the video. Please let me know what you're thinking in the comment section. I do my best to guide you through my thoughts and answer any questions I maybe didn't answer in this video. But I hope to see everyone again in week 2, and let's get off to a great start for Survivor.